Have you ever wondered if that old coin in your pocket or collection could be worth a fortune? Some rare coins have sold for millions of dollars, making them some of the most valuable collectibles in the world. In this video, we'll explore the most valuable coins and what makes them worth so much. Stay tuned, you won't want to miss this. First up, the 1949 wheat penny with an S mint mark, and the big question on everyone's mind. How much is it worth today, even in damaged condition? Now, you might be wondering, how can a coin that's seen some damage still be valuable? Well, the value of coins in less than perfect condition is still a big part of numismatics. The 1949 wheat penny with an S mint mark is a coin that has seen some fluctuations in the market, and even in a damaged state, it can still hold significant value. Let's dive into why this specific coin is interesting and why collectors care about it. First, let's talk about the 1949 wheat penny and its production. In 1949, the U.S. Mint produced these pennies at 3 locations: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. While the coins struck in Philadelphia and Denver are relatively common, the ones made at the San Francisco Mint are much rarer, and that's the S Mint mark we're talking about today. In 1949, the total mintage of the S Mint mark wheat penny was around 28 million coins. This makes it less common than the coins without a mint mark, or those from the Denver Mint, but it's not necessarily the rarest of the series. However, the real story lies in the condition of these coins and their potential value. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. This coin is damaged. We can clearly see that it has some noticeable wear and tear, which can include scratches, dents, or even environmental damage. But even though the coin isn't in perfect condition, it still holds some value. Here's where it gets interesting. A 1949 wheat penny with an S mint mark in average circulated condition, think moderate wear but no major damage, typically falls in the range of $20. But when the coin is in damaged condition, it will usually be valued lower. How much lower depends on the severity of the damage, but in general, a damaged coin could be worth anywhere from $50, maybe a bit more depending on the collector demand and market trends at the time. Even though the coin is damaged, collectors may still show interest due to its rarity. If a 1949 S mint wheat penny is in bad shape but still recognizable, it can still fetch a decent price in the right market. The rarity of the S mint mark plays a big role in its value. Collectors are often willing to pay more for a damaged coin than for a comparable example without the mint mark. The 1982 Washington Quarter with D mint mark, in dirty condition with a black color shade. We're going to take a close look at its design, how its condition affects its value, and what it's worth in today's market. If you've got one of these in your collection or are curious about how coins in rough condition fare, keep watching. Here it is, the 1982 Washington Quarter with D mint mark. As you can see, this coin has a distinctive black color shade, likely due to prolonged exposure to dirt, grime, or perhaps environmental factors that have caused it to discolor over the years. This shade of black, while uncommon, is something that collectors may encounter when dealing with coins that have spent time in circulation. Now, the D mint mark signifies that this coin was struck at the Denver Mint, one of the key facilities where U.S. coins are produced. The Washington Quarter series, which began in 1932, is a staple in American coinage, and the 1982 release continues the tradition of honoring the first president of the United States in George Washington. Now, let's break down the design. On the obverse, the front, of the coin, you'll find the iconic portrait of George Washington designed by John Flanagan. Washington is shown facing left, with his classic features and his profile looking very detailed. The Liberty inscription is across the top, with "In God We Trust" to the right. Below Washington, you'll see the year 1982, marking when this particular quarter was struck. The black coloration you see here is likely due to environmental damage, whether it's exposure to chemicals, dirt, or prolonged contact with moisture. Over time, coins like this can take on various tones due to the substances they come into contact with. This isn't an intentional feature like toning, which can happen naturally in certain conditions, but rather the result of the coin's age and time spent in circulation. As a result, this coin isn't exactly in mint condition. Instead, it's classified as being in dirty condition. The black color and the grime covering the coin will affect its appeal to collectors. Coins that are in dirty condition or have significant discoloration don't usually fetch high premiums, but they can still hold some value depending on the overall market and collector interest in specific years and mint marks. Since this coin has been well used, its value isn't likely to match that of a well-preserved mint state coin, but it does still have some worth above its face value of. Based on its condition, dirty, with the black color shade, the 1982 D Washington quarter is generally worth around $400 in today's market. While this may seem low, it's important to note that a coin's value can vary depending on factors such as market demand and how many collectors are interested in acquiring a quarter from this specific year and mint mark. Coins that are in worse condition, like those with heavy tarnishing or damage, usually don't see as much attention from serious collectors. However, this doesn't mean the coin is worthless. It's just worth a bit less due to the condition. If this coin was in better condition, say in extra fine or uncirculated condition, it could easily fetch a premium. But as it stands, the dirty condition with the black color shade reduces its overall appeal. Still, for collectors of the Washington Quarter series, or for those interested in circulated coins with visible wear and age, this quarter still has some historical and intrinsic value. Next up, the 1941 wheat penny without a mint mark. How much is it worth in very fine condition in today's market? Stick around, because this coin might surprise you. 1941 was a very important year in U.S. coin history. World War II was underway, and the nation's economy was in a time of transition. The wheat penny, produced from 1909 to 1958, has long been one of the most recognized and collected U.S. coins. The 1941 wheat penny, especially in very fine condition, holds a special place in the world of coin collecting. Now, let's take a closer look at the 1941 wheat penny. This coin features the familiar image of President Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the iconic wheat ears on the reverse. What makes this particular coin so interesting is that it was minted without a mint mark in Philadelphia. Coins struck in Philadelphia during this period didn't include a mint mark, so that's why this 1941 is often simply referred to as 1941 without mint mark. In 1941, the U.S. Mint produced over 1.1 billion wheat pennies, and nearly all of them came from the Philadelphia Mint, which didn't use a mint mark. This large production number might suggest that the 1941 wheat penny is common, and in many ways, it is. However, the condition of the coin plays a big role in determining its value. So, what does every fine condition mean? A very fine, or VF condition coin shows moderate wear but still retains most of the details. In the case of a 1941 wheat penny, the date and inscription "In God We Trust" are still clearly visible, and the wheat stalks on the reverse are well defined, though some of the finer details may be worn down slightly. In this condition, the coin remains very attractive and valuable to collectors. So, how much is this coin worth today? Despite the high mintage, a 1941 wheat penny in very fine condition can still fetch a respectable value on the market, particularly if it's well preserved. Let's break it down. On average, a 1941 wheat penny without a mint mark in very fine condition is worth between $40 and $50 in today's market. Now, this might seem modest, but it's important to keep in mind that prices can fluctuate depending on factors like market demand, individual seller conditions, and collector interest. In fact, if a coin is in particularly good very fine condition, one where the details are sharp and the overall appearance is especially clean, the value could climb a little higher, potentially reaching $60 to $90. Even though it might not be as valuable as rarer years or coins in pristine, uncirculated condition, the 1941 wheat penny in very fine condition is still a solid and desirable piece for collectors. With the strong demand for wheat pennies as part of the broader Lincoln Cent series, coins in this condition can hold steady value over time. And here's a tip for those of you who are just starting your collection. Even in very fine condition, these coins can be a good investment, especially if you're trying to build a set of older pennies. Over time, as they get more difficult to find in this condition, the price might rise. The 1941 without a mint mark is a great piece to own, and it's relatively affordable. One last thing, if you think you have a 1941 wheat penny in very fine condition, it's a good idea to take a closer look with a magnifier. Look for sharp details and make sure the coin doesn't have any significant wear or damage that would reduce its value. If you're ever in doubt, you might want to consult a professional coin appraiser to get an accurate estimate. Next up, the 1980 Washington Quarter with D mint mark in very fine condition. Whether you're a seasoned collector or just starting out, this coin holds a special place in the world of numismatics. So, if you've come across one of these in your collection, or if you're curious about how it stacks up in today's market, keep watching as we break down its value, design, and historical significance. Here it is, the 1980 Washington Quarter with the D mint mark. As you can see, this coin is in very fine condition, which means it has some wear, but the design elements are still clear and well-defined. The overall look of the coin still showcases the features that collectors love about the Washington Quarter series. Now, you might be wondering, what does it mean for a coin to be in very fine condition? Coins in very fine condition typically show light wear, but the main details, including the image of George Washington and the design on the reverse, remain clearly visible. You won't see a lot of major scratches or dents, and the edges will still have some sharpness to them. While not as perfect as an uncirculated coin, a very fine quarter is still in pretty good shape. Let's take a look at the design of the 1980 Washington Quarter. On the obverse, the front, we've got the well-known portrait of George Washington. This design was created by John Flanagan and has been used on the Washington Quarters since 1932. It shows Washington facing left, with liberty across the top and in God We Trust to the right. You'll also find the 1980 year of minting directly below Washington's portrait. In terms of value, coins in very fine condition are typically worth more than those in good or fine condition, but not as much as those in extra fine or uncirculated condition. The 1980 Washington Quarter is a regular strike coin, meaning it was made for general circulation, not for collectors or special editions. That being said, it still holds some value due to its age and its status as part of a well-loved series. In very fine condition, the 1980D Washington Quarter is generally worth around $50 in today's market, depending on factors such as demand and current trends in the numismatic community. This value is above its face value of as most coins in very fine condition carry a premium due to their age and the fact that they've been preserved better than those in lower grades. It's important to note that the value of this coin can fluctuate depending on the collector market. If there is a rise in demand for Washington Quarters from certain years or mints, the 1980D could see a bump in price. Additionally, key factors like the mintage numbers and how well the coin has been stored over time will also influence its value. In terms of the mintage of the 1980 Washington Quarter, the D mint mark indicates that it was produced at the Denver Mint. A total of 360 million of these quarters were struck in 1980, making it a relatively common year and mint mark. Coins that have higher mintage numbers like this one don't usually command sky-high values unless they have unique errors or other exceptional qualities. So, where should you go to buy or sell a coin like this? Well, if you have a 1980D Washington Quarter in very fine condition and you're looking to sell it, your best bet is to take it to a local coin shop, or you can also look for reputable online dealers or auction sites. Keep in mind that the condition of the coin is key when it comes to pricing. So if you're looking to sell or buy, always get an appraisal to ensure you're getting the best price for your coin. Next up, the 1944 wheat penny without mint mark in good condition. You might be surprised at what this coin could be worth in today's market. Let's dive in. 1944 was a pivotal year in American history. The country was deep into World War II, and the economy was transitioning in some really unique ways. The U.S. Mint produced billions of pennies that year, but today we're specifically looking at the 1944 wheat penny without a mint mark, struck at the Philadelphia Mint. As you can see, this coin features President Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, surrounded by the inscription "In God We Trust" and the year 1944. On the reverse side, you've got the iconic wheat stalks. Now, what makes this particular coin so interesting is that it has no mint mark, meaning it was produced at the Philadelphia Mint. Coins from Philadelphia during this time didn't carry a mint mark, unlike those from Denver or San Francisco in 1944. The U.S. Mint produced more than 1.1 billion pennies, and a huge majority of those came from the Philadelphia Mint, meaning these pennies are far from rare. But despite the large mintage, the value of this particular coin can still vary depending on its condition, and that's where the story gets interesting. Now, let's talk about the condition of the coin. We're focusing on the 1944 wheat penny in good condition, or G condition, as it's sometimes called. In good condition, you'll notice that the coin shows clear signs of wear and tear, but the date, the inscription, and the overall design are still recognizable. The details in the wheat stalks and Lincoln's portrait might be somewhat worn, but they're still distinguishable. In good condition, you're looking at a coin that's definitely been in circulation. The wear won't be so extreme that the details are completely wiped out, but it's not going to have the sharp, crisp features of a coin in fine or uncirculated condition. So, how much could this penny be worth today? In today's market, a 1944 wheat penny without a mint mark in good condition typically ranges from $300. While this might not sound like a fortune, it's important to understand that these coins were minted in massive quantities, and the value of a good condition coin is primarily driven by the demand for them, which can fluctuate over time. While this penny might not be the most valuable in terms of raw dollar value, it's still a coin with historical significance. And let's face it, some collectors are drawn to the very fact that this coin comes from a year that played such a key role in world history. Next up, the 1965 Washington quarter dollar without a mint mark. And we're talking about one in fine condition, so if you have one of these coins lying around, keep watching to find out how much it's worth in today's market. Let's start with a little history. The year 1965 was a pivotal year for U.S. coinage. The U.S. Mint made a significant change to the composition of its coins that year due to the rising price of silver and a national coin shortage. In 1965, the U.S. government passed the Coinage Act of 1965, which removed silver from the quarter, replacing it with a copper-nickel-clad composition. This was the beginning of the clad coinage era, a shift from the traditional silver content that defined many U.S. coins up until then. And interestingly, in 1965, the Mint temporarily stopped using mint marks on coins, so this year's Washington quarter doesn't have one. That's right, if you find a 1965 Washington quarter with no mint mark, it was struck at one of the two major mints, either Philadelphia or Denver, but you won't know which one just by looking at the coin. Now, let's talk about the design of the coin. The 1965 Washington quarter kept the same design introduced back in 1932 to commemorate George Washington's 200th birthday. On the obverse, you'll find the famous bust of George Washington facing left, with the inscription Liberty at the top, In God We Trust to the left, and the year 1965 at the bottom. And on the reverse, you'll see the American bald eagle in flight, holding a bundle of arrows in one talon and an olive branch in the other. The eagle is perched above the words United States of America, with a pluribus unum above it and quarter dollar below. Unlike the earlier quarters made with silver, this coin has a copper-nickel-clad composition. The core of the coin is copper, surrounded by a copper-nickel alloy. This gives the 1965 quarter a distinct appearance and feel compared to previous silver quarters. In terms of mintage, the 1965 Washington quarter was produced in enormous quantities. The total mintage that year was over 1.8 billion coins. This makes it one of the most common quarters ever produced by the U.S. Mint. Since there is no mint mark on these coins, they were struck at both the Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint. The only way to tell the difference is through specific varieties or errors. But generally speaking, Philadelphia struck the bulk of them. As for the composition, the 1965 quarter is made up of 75% copper and 25% nickel, with a total weight of 5.67 grams and a diameter of 24.3 millimeters. Now, let's talk about condition. The coin we're discussing today is in fine condition. In fine condition, you'll typically see significant wear on the high points of the coin. On this quarter, that means the details of Washington's hair and face will be visible but worn down, and some of the finer details of the eagle on the reverse may also be less defined. That's right, while these coins are historical, they're still relatively common in circulation. The lack of silver content and the large mintage keep the value low compared to other coins that were struck before or after 1965. However, the condition and any potential rarities like error coins can certainly affect the price. For instance, 1,965 quarters with error varieties, such as double dies or clipped planchets, can be worth hundreds to thousands of dollars, depending on their rarity and condition. While the 1965 Washington quarter is not particularly rare in fine condition, collectors still value it for its historical importance and unique place in coinage history. Next up today, we're zooming in on a 1956 wheat penny with the D Mint Mark large date variety, with a unique black tone, and we're going to break down its value right now in the current market. The 1956-D wheat penny might not be the rarest of the Lincoln cent family, but certain variations and conditions can still make it pretty collectible, especially if it has an eye-catching look, like a dark or blackened tone, and is in fine condition. So let's talk about what makes this penny stand out, and what it could fetch today. First, some quick facts. The D stands for Denver, where over 1.05 billion 1956 wheat pennies were minted, yes, billion with a B. So by sheer numbers, it's not rare. However, collectors still care about certain details: the date style, the mint mark, and the condition. Now let's talk about the color. A black or dark-toned penny usually gets that way from environmental exposure. Maybe it was in soil, a jar, or exposed to moisture or heat. While it's not a factory error, it can give the coin a unique appearance collectors may find interesting, though it generally lowers value slightly. So let's talk value. A 1956 D wheat penny with a large date in typical brown or red-brown fine condition usually sells for $34,000. But with the added black toning, which isn't an official mint feature, collectors might only pay $20,000, depending on eye appeal. If your coin has that dark tone and it's still in solid, fine shape, it's a neat piece to hold on to, especially if you're building a full wheat penny set. But don't expect to retire off this one. It's more of a collector curiosity than a jackpot. Next up. Today, we're looking at a 1979 Washington quarter with D mint mark. But there's a twist: it's in damaged condition. You might have one of these quarters lying around in your collection, or maybe you found one in your pocket change. But what's it worth? Stick around to find out. Before we get into the value, let's take a quick trip back to 1979. The Washington Quarter series had been around for decades, first introduced in 1932 to honor George Washington's 200th birthday. Fast forward to 1979, and the quarter was still part of the bicentennial design, with George Washington's bust on the front and a bold eagle on the reverse. In 1979, the United States was in a period of economic adjustment, recovering from the recession of the mid-70s and facing inflation concerns. Coinage production was still in full swing, and by this time the quarter had shifted from silver to copper nickel-clad coins. This allowed the mint to produce more quarters at a lower cost compared to their silver counterparts. The 1979 Washington quarter follows the same design introduced in 1932. On the obverse, front, you've got George Washington facing left, with the word Liberty above him, and In God We Trust to the left. Below Washington, you'll see the year 1979 right next to the mint mark D, signifying that this coin was struck at the Denver Mint. Turning it over, the reverse features an eagle in flight, clutching arrows in one talon and an olive branch in the other, with United States of America and a pluribus unum encircling the eagle. The inscription $quarter appears below the eagle. Now, when it comes to the mintage of the 1979 Washington quarter, the total production was around 850 million coins, making it a fairly common coin. A large portion of these were struck at the Denver Mint, so if you have a 1979 D quarter, you're not alone. As for the composition, the 1979 quarter is made of 75% copper and 25% nickel, giving it the distinctive metallic feel of a modern U.S. quarter. It weighs in at 5.67 grams and has a diameter of 24.3 millimeters. Now, let's talk about the condition of this coin. Damage condition. When a coin is in damaged condition, it's no longer in its original pristine form. This could include scratches, dents, bent edges, discoloration, or other types of wear caused by handling, exposure, or even environmental factors like being buried for years. Damage to a coin can significantly reduce its value. The 1979 D Washington quarter in this condition likely has issues like surface abrasions, tarnishing, or perhaps even some deep scratches on the face of Washington or the eagle. Coins like this have lost much of their original detail, making them less attractive to collectors seeking high-quality examples. In this kind of condition, it's important to remember that the value isn't just tied to its historical or collectible significance. It also depends on how much damage the coin has sustained. And generally, damage can make a coin less desirable in the collector market. Unfortunately, due to the damage, the value of this coin is significantly lower than if it were in good or uncirculated condition. A 1979 D Washington quarter in damaged condition typically has a value of around $65,000. While this is much less than a coin in better condition, it's still worth more than face value, so it's not completely worthless. It's also important to note that damaged coins often don't hold the same collectible value as those in better condition. That being said, certain collectors might still show interest in a coin with historical significance, even in poor condition. Coins in good to very fine condition are worth anywhere from $600, and if you happen to find a 1979 D quarter in mint or uncirculated condition, its value could go up to $700, or even more, depending on the market demand and quality. Even though damaged coins might not bring in top dollar, the 1979 Washington quarter still has its appeal for collectors. Many collectors are particularly interested in assembling complete sets of quarters from specific years, including 1979. So, while this coin may not be a high-value item in damaged condition, it can still hold some historical interest. Next up, the 1952 D wheat penny with the large date variety, but here's the catch. This coin is in dirty condition. How does that affect its value in today's market? Stick around and let's find out. Now, the 1952 D wheat penny is part of the Lincoln Cent series, which ran from 1909 to 1958. The D Mint mark tells us this particular penny was minted at the Denver Mint, and the large date variety means the numbers in the year are slightly larger than the small date variety from the same year. As you can see, this coin has some visible dirt, grime, and maybe even a little corrosion. While this doesn't mean it's worthless, it does affect the coin's overall condition and value. A lot of collectors would consider this dirty, and in some cases it could even lower the value. Let's talk about cleaning. In the world of coin collecting, cleaning a coin is a big no-no. It can scratch, damage, and devalue it. But dirt and grime are a bit different. While it's not ideal, a coin that's simply dirty, not cleaned improperly, can still hold some value. The key is the condition of the coin underneath that grime. In 1952, over 1.1 billion wheat pennies were minted, and most of them came from the Denver Mint. That makes the 1952 D penny pretty common overall, especially in the large date variety, which is by far the more common version. But don't let that fool you. Condition is key to determining its value. When we say dirty condition, what we really mean is that the coin shows signs of wear and has visible dirt or corrosion, but it's still intact. The details on the coin, especially on the obverse of Lincoln and the reverse wheat stalks, are visible but worn down. The date is legible, but it might be harder to make out some of the finer details. Now, when it comes to the value of a 1952 D wheat penny in this dirty condition, it's important to note that a coin in this state is generally worth between $80,000 in today's market. While that might not sound like much, it's still more than its face value of 1 cent, and keep in mind, the overall condition of the coin affects its value. Here's something interesting. Even though the coin is in a dirty state, it still has value. It's not going to be worth a lot because it's not in pristine condition, but it's definitely worth more than the penny you might find in your pocket change. If this coin were cleaned or in better condition, it could be worth much more. So, while a coin in dirty condition won't fetch the higher prices that a well-preserved or uncirculated coin would, it's still a valuable piece of history. The 1952 D wheat penny is widely collected, and as long as the dirt doesn't completely obscure the coin's features, it will remain a desirable piece. Next up, the 1967 Washington quarter dollar with no mint mark. If you're wondering what it's worth today in today's market, stay tuned as we break it down. Before we talk about value, Let's rewind a bit and look at the 1967 Washington quarter and its historical context. By 1967, the Washington quarter had been in circulation for over 30 years, introduced in 1932 to commemorate George Washington's 200th birthday. The coin had a long history of being produced in silver, but starting in 1965, the U.S. Mint switched to a copper-nickel-clad composition for most circulation coins due to rising silver prices. The 1967 quarter, which you're looking at, is made of 75% copper and 25% nickel, and was produced primarily for general circulation. In 1967, the U.S. was dealing with a time of social and political upheaval, with the civil rights movement gaining momentum, the Vietnam War intensifying, and the country experiencing a cultural shift. But what does all that have to do with a quarter? Well, the 1967 Washington quarter reflects the mid-60s period when the U.S. Mint was focused on transitioning the nation's coinage away from silver and adjusting to the economic environment. One thing to note here, this quarter, like other coins minted after 1964, does not have the silver content that earlier Washington quarters had, but the design is still a staple of American coinage and remains largely unchanged even today. Now, let's talk about the mintage numbers and the composition of this coin. In 1967, the U.S. Mint produced over 1 billion Washington quarters, making the 1967 quarter fairly common in circulation. However, this particular quarter is from the Philadelphia Mint, which did not include a mint mark on coins produced there at the time. Therefore, this coin will show no mint mark, unlike those from the Denver Mint or San Francisco Mint, which would have had a D or S mint mark respectively. As I mentioned earlier, this coin is made from 75% copper and 25% nickel, so it has a bit of a metallic sheen to it and doesn't have the same weight or value as its earlier silver counterparts. It weighs about 5.67 grams and has a diameter of 24.3 millimeters. In the coin grading scale, fine condition refers to a coin that shows noticeable wear but still retains much of the design detail. For a quarter, this would mean that the bust of George Washington and the eagle on the reverse are still relatively defined, though there might be some surface scratches, wear on the high points, and slight fading of the lettering. It's definitely not in pristine condition, but it's far from being heavily worn or damaged. Due to the relatively high mintage and the fact that this coin isn't considered rare, a 1,967 Washington quarter in fine condition typically has a market value of about $100. This is assuming there's no unique feature or rare error associated with the coin. Now, if you happen to have a 1967 Washington quarter that's in better condition, say in very fine or uncirculated condition, the value can go up significantly, possibly reaching $150 or more. But because this coin is in fine condition, it won't fetch a premium unless it has something special, like an error or a very low population for that year. Even though the 1967 Washington quarter may not be worth a fortune in fine condition, it's still a coin of interest for collectors. It's a part of a series that has been consistently produced for decades, and many collectors enjoy collecting Washington quarters from various years to complete their sets. For example, if you're working on assembling a set of quarters from the 1960s, this coin would be a great addition. Additionally, if you can find one with an interesting variety, error, or unique feature, it could add some value. Sometimes coin collectors and investors look for key dates, mint marks, and condition levels to drive up the price. So, there you have it. If you have a 1967 Washington quarter without mint mark and fine condition, its current market value is around $200. While it may not be a high-value coin, it's still a significant piece of U.S. history and a nice addition to any collection. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you can stay updated on all our future videos. Thanks for watching, and as always, happy collecting!